Welcome back to Motivation Library. Today we're going to be cracking open Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Oh, yeah. This book's been everywhere, getting shout-outs from big names like Stephen Pressfield and Austin Kleon. Even basketball coach George Raveling's a fan.
It's quite the lineup. I've been seeing it everywhere, too. What is it about ego that makes it such a timely topic, do you think?
Well, it seems like everywhere you look these days, people are tripping over their own egos, whether it's business politics or even just everyday life.
Yeah.
Ryan Holiday really nails it in this book. He shows how ego can hold us back from reaching our full potential.
Okay, so how does Holiday set the stage for this deep dive into ego?
He actually kicks things off with his own story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he takes us on this kind of roller coaster ride through his career.
Ah.
He talks about his early success working with big rock bands and best-selling authors,
Okay.
then landing a top spot at American Apparel during their heyday, and then watching it all crumble.
It sounds like he's experienced both the highs and lows of ambition pretty early on.
He definitely did. And he's really candid about the toll it took on him. He doesn't shy away from sharing his own struggles with ego, and that makes his message even more powerful. It's a great reminder that even those who appear successful can be grappling with these internal battles.
So how does Holiday define ego exactly? I mean, isn't some level of confidence and ambition necessary for success?
That's a great question. Holiday isn't saying that all ambition is bad. What he's getting at is this. Ego is that voice in our head that's focused on self-importance.
Okay.
It's always seeking validation and recognition, often at the expense of genuine growth and accomplishment.
So it's about finding that balance between striving for excellence and getting caught up in a need for external validation.
Exactly. And Holiday breaks down the book into 3 sections to explore how ego can sabotage us at different stages. Aspiration, success, and failure.
Okay.
Let's start with Aspire. One of the most fascinating stories he shares in this section is about General William Tecumseh Sherman.
Oh, the Civil War general. I wouldn't exactly think of a military leader as a poster child for humility.
Yeah.
That's what makes the story so surprising. Sherman played a pivotal role in the Civil War, yet he actively avoided the spotlight. He even turned down the presidency.
Wow.
He was much more interested in getting the job done than receiving accolades or personal glory.
So he embodied that actions speak louder than words mentality.
Absolutely. And Holiday ties Sherman's story back to some ancient wisdom. He highlights this letter from Isocrates to a young man named Demonicus. It's basically a guide to navigating ambition.
Okay.
It urges Demonicus to cultivate virtues like modesty, justice, and self-control.
It's fascinating how these timeless principles about humility and self-control still hold true today.
It really is. And we often hear this message to follow your passion, but Holiday throws us a curveball here. He uses examples like the Segway and the Iraq War to show how blind passion fueled by ego can actually lead to disaster.
So passion isn't always the answer. It's not that simple. He's not saying passion is bad, but that unchecked passion can be dangerous. If we let our ego take over, our passion can become obsessive and lead to impulsive decisions and unrealistic expectations.
So it's about channeling that passion in a healthy and productive way.
Right. And that's where Holiday brings in John Boyd's concept of to be or to do. It's this powerful question that forces us to examine our motivations. Are we focused on genuine accomplishment, the doing? Or are we more concerned with titles, status, and external validation of the being?
So it's that age-old question of substance versus image.
Precisely. And ego often pushes us towards the image,
Right.
towards seeking recognition and praise rather than focusing on the actual work.
And speaking of work, Holiday emphasizes that talking about our goals can actually be counterproductive.
Right.
He argues that too much talk can drain our energy and create the illusion of progress.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, especially in today's world of social media where everyone's constantly broadcasting their intentions and accomplishments. But as Holiday points out, the effort is enough. True satisfaction comes from putting in the work, from grappling with the challenges, and ultimately from creating something real.
And he backs this up with a great example. He talks about Kirk Hammett, the guitarist for Metallica.
Oh, yeah. Even after joining this legendary band, Hammett sought out rigorous instruction from Joe Satriani to keep refining his skills.
That's incredible. Even at the top of his game, he recognized the importance of staying humble and continuing to learn.
Exactly. It's this commitment to continuous improvement,
Okay.
to always being a student that truly sets successful people apart. And it's something we can all cultivate no matter what our goals are.
Before we dive into the next section, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for watching and supporting Motivation Library. Your likes and subscriptions really help us keep this channel going and bring you more deep dives like this.
Yes, thank you so much for being a part of this community. We truly appreciate your support.
Now back to ego as the enemy. We've talked about how to keep our ego in check during the aspire phase. But what happens when we actually achieve success? That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, let's move on to success then. What cautionary tales does Holiday have for us in this section?
One of the most striking examples he uses is Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes.
Yeah, here's a guy who had it all. Wealth, fame, talent. But his unchecked ego turned him into a recluse plagued by paranoia and self-destructive behaviors.
Oh, wow.
He ultimately ended up with a tragic downfall, despite all his outward success.
His story is a stark reminder that success without the right mindset can be just as dangerous as failure.
It's like that saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But Holiday shows us that it's not just about political power.
Right.
This dynamic can play out in any area of life. Business relationships, even within families.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap? What does Holiday suggest?
Well, he offers a fascinating contrast to Hughes by highlighting the story of Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan, the brutal conqueror. That seems like an odd choice for someone who's advocating against ego.
That's what makes this example so brilliant. While Khan is often remembered for his ruthlessness, Holiday points out that he was also incredibly open-minded and adaptable.
Okay.
He was constantly learning from the cultures he encountered, adopting new technologies and strategies.
So instead of letting success make him rigid and arrogant, he used it as an opportunity to keep growing.
Exactly. He understood that true strength comes from flexibility, from a willingness to adapt and evolve. This is something a lot of people and organizations struggle with, especially as they become successful.
It's like that beginner's mind we talked about earlier. It's about staying curious, open to new ideas, and never assuming we have all the answers, even when we've achieved a certain level of success.
And that's where ego can really trip us up. It can make us believe we've arrived, that we no longer need to learn and grow.
Okay, so we've seen how ego can sabotage us both in the pursuit of our goals and in the handling of success. But what about when things don't go our way? What happens when we face failure?
That's where Holiday takes us in the final section of the book. And it's probably the most insightful of them all.
Oh.
Yeah. He challenges our assumptions about failure, showing us how it can actually be our greatest teacher.
I'm intrigued. How does he frame failure in a positive light?
He uses the incredible story of Katharine Graham, who took over the Washington Post after her husband's suicide. She was thrown into this leadership position with little experience and faced immense challenges. A hostile board, legal battles, even a printers union strike.
It sounds like she had every reason to give up.
She absolutely did. But what's remarkable is that she didn't let ego dictate her reactions. She didn't crumble under the pressure or try to pretend she had all the answers. Instead, she remained humble, sought guidance from others, and focused on learning from her mistakes.
So she used her setbacks as fuel for growth rather than letting them define her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And her story reminds us that we all have a choice in how we respond to failure. We could let it crush us, or we can use it as an opportunity to build resilience, develop new skills, and emerge even stronger.
I love how Holiday uses these real-world examples to illustrate his points. It makes the concept so much more relatable and actionable.
He's a master storyteller, that's for sure. And he uses these stories not just to entertain, but to make us think about our own lives, our own struggles with ego, and how we can apply these lessons to our own journeys.
Now, before I move on, I want to ask you a question. What's one thing that's really stood out to you so far from this deep dive into ego is the enemy?
What really strikes me is this idea of maintaining a student mindset throughout life.
Oh, yeah.
It's about approaching everything with curiosity and humility, recognizing that we always have more to learn no matter how much we've achieved.
I completely agree. And it's not just about formal education. It's about being open to learning from everyone and every experience, whether it's a success, a failure, or even just a casual conversation.
And that's a powerful antidote to ego, which often makes us feel like we already have all the answers.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to wrap up part 1 of our deep dives. Join us next time as we continue exploring Ego is the Enemy, delving deeper into the specific strategies Holiday offers for managing our ego and living a more fulfilling life. We'll see you then. Welcome back to Motivation Library.
It's great to be back. We're digging deeper into Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, exploring how to keep ego from sabotaging our lives.
Last time we left off talking about Katharine Graham and how she faced those intense challenges at the Washington Post.
Her story was a powerful example of resilience and humility in the face of failure. But Holiday doesn't stop there. He goes on to highlight another subtle way ego can mess us up by distorting our perception of control.
Oh, that's interesting. How does ego play into our sense of control?
Well, it makes us think we should be able to control everything, that the world should bend to our will. But as Holiday points out, that's simply not reality.
Okay.
He brings up the story of Belisarius, this brilliant Byzantine general who won countless victories for the Roman Empire. But despite his accomplishments, he was betrayed by the emperor, stripped of his power, and even according to some accounts, blinded and left begging on the streets.
That's a heartbreaking story. It sounds like he was a victim of political maneuvering and ultimately had no control over his fate.
Exactly. And Holiday uses Belisarius' story to highlight the difference between what we can control, our actions and choices, and what we can't control, the actions of others, luck, and the unpredictable nature of the world.
So it's about focusing on what we can influence and letting go of the need to control everything else.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot between striving for excellence and accepting the reality that we can't orchestrate every outcome. Ego often makes us resist that acceptance, leading to frustration, resentment, and ultimately a sense of powerlessness.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes we need to adjust our approach, recognize the limits of our control, and work within the constraints of the situation.
And speaking of adapting to situations, Holiday argues that failure is not the opposite of success, but rather a necessary stepping stone on the path to growth.
I like that perspective. So often we're taught to fear failure, but maybe we should view it as a valuable learning opportunity instead.
Exactly. He uses Steve Jobs' firing from Apple as a prime example.
Oh, yeah.
It was a huge blow to Jobs' ego, but he didn't let it break him. He went on to start new companies, refine his leadership style, and eventually return to Apple, leading it to become the global powerhouse it is today.
It's almost like being knocked down forced him to reevaluate his approach and come back even stronger.
That's the key takeaway. Failure can be a powerful teacher, but only if we're willing to learn from it. Ego often makes us defensive and resistant to feedback, preventing us from seeing our mistakes as opportunities for growth.
So instead of letting ego turn failure into a setback, we can use it as fuel for improvement.
Exactly. And Holiday reminds us that this applies to all of us, not just tech giants like Steve Jobs. We all face setbacks and challenges, but it's how we respond to those moments that truly defines us.
Now remember those Fight Club moments we touched on earlier? Holiday dives deeper into this concept, urging us to intentionally create experiences that shake us out of our routines and challenge our assumptions.
I'm curious to hear more about this. What kind of experiences does he have in mind?
Well, he uses the example of the protagonist in the novel Fight Club, who, after having his apartment and all his possessions destroyed, embarks on a journey of self-discovery and transformation.
I'm not sure I'm ready to blow up my apartment just yet.
Of course not. Holiday isn't suggesting we all become anarchists. The point is to find our own ways to intentionally disrupt our comfort zones, whether it's taking on a challenging new project, traveling to a foreign country, or speaking up for our beliefs in a situation where we'd normally stay silent.
So it's about pushing ourselves beyond those self-imposed limits and embracing the discomfort that comes with growth.
Exactly, because real growth rarely happens within the confines of our comfort zones. Ego often makes us cling to what's familiar, even when it's no longer serving us. These Fight Club moments, as Holiday calls them, help us break free from those limitations.
I can see how that ties into his overall message about taming ego. It's about recognizing those patterns of behavior that hold us back and intentionally doing things that challenge those patterns.
That's a great insight. It's about taking ownership of our growth, not waiting for some external force to shake things up for us.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about some more practical strategies for managing ego on a daily basis.
I'm all ears. What kind of tactics does Holiday recommend?
One of the simplest but most effective strategies he suggests is to focus on the process rather than the outcome.
Okay.
This means breaking down our goals into smaller, more manageable steps and finding satisfaction in the daily actions and habits that contribute to our overall success.
So instead of getting caught up in the end goal, it's about enjoying the journey and celebrating the small wins along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This approach not only reduces anxiety and pressure, but also allows us to stay present and enjoy the process and make adjustments as needed without getting derailed by setbacks.
It reminds me of the saying, enjoy the journey, not the destination. It's about finding fulfillment in the doing rather than just focusing on the end result.
That's a great way to put it. And Holiday emphasizes that this applies to all areas of life, from creative endeavors to personal relationships. It's about showing up consistently, putting in the work, and focusing on what we can control, rather than obsessing over outcomes we can't always predict.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about shifting our focus from what we want to happen to what we're actually doing to make it happen.
Now, remember how we talked about the stories we tell ourselves about our successes and failures?
Yeah.
Holiday warns us against falling into the trap of creating these grand narratives that may not fully reflect reality.
Oh, yes. It's so easy to embellish our accomplishments and downplay our mistakes, creating these artificial storylines that feed our ego.
Right. And those stories can actually prevent us from seeing the world clearly and learning from our experiences. Holiday stresses the importance of cultivating humility, being honest with ourselves about our strengths and weaknesses, and recognizing the role of luck timing and the contributions of others in our achievements.
So it's about acknowledging the complexity of life, recognizing that things aren't always black and white, and being open to multiple perspectives.
Exactly. It's about embracing the uncertainty, knowing that even when we don't have all the answers, we can still move forward with courage and clarity.
Now, another important aspect of managing ego is learning to draw the line. This means setting boundaries and knowing when to walk away from situations that are toxic, unhealthy, or that compromise our values.
This sounds like a crucial skill, but it can also be really challenging, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with demands and expectations.
It definitely takes courage and self-awareness. Holiday reminds us that we don't have to tolerate bad behavior or put up with people who treat us poorly no matter how successful or powerful they may be.
So it's about protecting our own well-being and recognizing that sometimes the best course of action is to simply walk away.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to say no and to prioritize our own growth and well-being.
Now, Holiday also encourages us to maintain our own scorecard.
Okay.
That means defining our own metrics for success, rather than letting ourselves be defined by external measures of achievement status or recognition.
So it's about focusing on our own values, our own goals, and our own sense of purpose, rather than chasing external validation.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that true success is an internal measure, not something that can be determined by outside forces. It's about living a life that feels meaningful and authentic to us, even if it doesn't always align with society's definition of success.
I love that. It's about finding that inner compass and following it regardless of what the external world may dictate.
And that's where ego often tries to trip us up by making us focus on external validation rather than internal fulfillment.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to highlight one more key concept that Holiday emphasizes: gratitude.
Gratitude. How does that tie into managing ego?
Well, ego often makes us focus on what we lack, leading to feelings of dissatisfaction and envy. Gratitude, on the other hand, allows us to appreciate what we have, to find joy in the present moment, and to connect with a sense of abundance.
So it's about shifting our perspective from scarcity to abundance, from focusing on what we don't have to appreciating what we do have.
Exactly. And it's a practice we can cultivate intentionally. Holiday suggests taking the time each day to reflect on the good things in our lives, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant.
That's a great reminder. Sometimes we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of life that we forget to pause and appreciate the simple things that bring us joy.
And that simple act of appreciation can have a profound impact on our overall well-being. It helps us to feel more grounded, contented, and at peace, which in turn makes us less susceptible to the negative influences of ego.
I can definitely see how that works. When we're feeling grateful for what we have, we're less likely to get caught up in the comparison game or feel the need to prove ourselves to others.
Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to encourage everyone watching to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Your support really does help us keep creating content like this and bringing these important ideas to a wider audience.
And if you're enjoying this deep dive, be sure to check out our other videos on Motivation Library, where we explore a wide range of books, ideas, and strategies for personal growth and fulfillment.
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some more specific tactics and techniques Holiday offers for putting these principles into action. So stay tuned.
We'll see you back here soon for the conclusion of our exploration of Ego is the Enemy. Welcome back to Motivation Library. We're wrapping up our deep dive into Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy.
It's been a fascinating journey so far. We've seen how ego can sabotage us in aspirations, success, and even failure.
Right, we've explored strategies like embracing those Fight Club moments and maintaining our own scorecard.
Oh, and cultivating gratitude.
Yes. Now, in this final part, let's get even more practical. What specific techniques does Holiday offer for putting these principles into action in our daily lives?
Well, he starts by emphasizing the power of small and simple tasks.
Okay.
It's easy to get overwhelmed by the big picture. by the enormity of our goals.
I can relate to that. Sometimes I get so caught up in the end goal that I just feel paralyzed.
Exactly. But as Holiday reminds us, a little every day is more than a lot once in a while. By breaking down those big, audacious goals into smaller, more manageable steps, we can overcome that feeling of overwhelm and start making progress.
It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Right?
We can achieve amazing things by consistently taking those small, deliberate actions.
And those small wins, as Holiday calls them, they can create this powerful snowball effect. As we start to see progress, we gain momentum, confidence, and motivation to keep going.
It's a much more sustainable approach than trying to tackle everything at once and then getting discouraged when we hit a roadblock. Now, another practical technique Holiday suggests is to find a creative outlet.
Okay.
Something that allows us to express ourselves and explore new ideas outside of work or daily responsibilities.
That sounds like a great way to tap into our passions and recharge.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And he emphasizes that this creative outlet doesn't have to be anything fancy or professional. It could be writing, painting, music, gardening, anything that brings us joy and allows us to tap into our creativity.
So it's not about the outcome, it's about the process of creating.
Exactly. The key is to approach it with a sense of playfulness and experimentation, not getting caught up in the need for perfection or external validation.
It's about letting go of that inner critic and allowing ourselves to create freely without judgment.
Now, alongside finding creative outlets, Holiday also stresses the importance of building a solid routine. A set of daily habits and practices that support our physical, mental, and emotional well-being.
This sounds a lot like what we often hear about self-care these days.
It is, but Holiday frames it in a slightly different way. He emphasizes that self-care isn't selfish, it's essential.
Right.
It's essential for our overall effectiveness and ability to show up fully in the world.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first before helping others. We can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Holiday suggests incorporating practices like exercise, meditation, journaling, spending time in nature, or simply taking some time each day to disconnect from technology and reconnect with ourselves.
The key is to create a routine that feels nourishing and sustainable, something that helps us to stay grounded, centered, and energized, even amidst the chaos and demands of everyday life.
So it's about creating a solid foundation for ourselves,
Yeah.
a framework that supports our overall well-being and allows us to navigate the challenges of life with more grace and resilience.
Now, alongside these practical tips, Holiday emphasizes the importance of cultivating self-awareness, which he calls the antidote to ego.
Self-awareness, how do we develop that?
It starts with paying attention to our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors, and noticing how ego manifests in our lives. It's about recognizing those patterns of thinking and acting that lead us down the path of self-sabotage, self-doubt, and negativity.
So it's about becoming aware of those negative thought patterns and those ego-driven behaviors that hold us back.
Exactly. And Holiday suggests that one of the most powerful tools for cultivating self-awareness is meditation.
Meditation. I've heard that can be helpful, but I'm not sure I have the patience for it.
I understand. A lot of people have misconceptions about meditation. It's not about emptying our minds or achieving some kind of blissful state.
Okay.
It's about training our attention,
Right.
developing our ability to focus, and becoming more aware of the present moment.
So it's about quieting that mental chatter and becoming more present in our daily lives.
Exactly. And as we practice meditation, we start to notice this constant stream of thoughts, worries, and judgments that run through our minds. But we also start to develop a sense of space around those thoughts, recognizing that we are not our thoughts and that we have the power to choose which thoughts we engage with and which thoughts we let go of.
It's about becoming the observer of our own minds rather than being ruled by our thoughts and emotions.
Exactly. And that ability to detach from the constant stream of mental activity to create space for awareness and conscious choice is incredibly liberating.
Now, in addition to self-awareness, Holiday stresses the importance of seeking out feedback, especially from people we trust and respect.
Feedback can be tough to swallow sometimes, especially when it challenges our perceptions or points out our blind spots.
It definitely can be. But, as Holiday reminds us, feedback is a gift even when it's difficult to hear.
Right.
It helps us to see ourselves more clearly, to identify areas where we need to improve, and to course correct before we get too far off track.
It's about having the humility to recognize that we don't have all the answers and being open to learning from others.
And it's about surrounding ourselves with the right people. People who are willing to be honest with us.
Okay.
Who have our best interests at heart, and who can offer constructive criticism in a supportive and encouraging way.
That makes sense. We need to cultivate relationships with people who challenge us to grow, not just those who always tell us what we want to hear.
Now, this brings us to Holiday's final piece of advice, which is perhaps the most powerful and the most challenging. Always love.
Love. That seems like a pretty lofty concept to apply to everyday life.
It does. But Holiday reminds us that love isn't just about romantic relationships. It's about approaching the world with a sense of compassion, empathy, and understanding, even when we're faced with negativity, hostility, or betrayal.
So it's about choosing kindness over judgment, forgiveness over resentment, and connection over isolation.
Exactly. It's a radical message, especially in a world that often encourages us to divide ourselves along lines of race, religion, politics, and other ideologies. But as Holiday points out, love is ultimately the only way to heal those divisions and create a more just equitable and fulfilling world for all.
That's a powerful message to end on. It reminds us that even in the face of adversity, we always have the choice to respond with love and understanding.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ego as the enemy, what are some of the key takeaways that you'll be taking with you?
For me, it's the importance of cultivating a beginner's mind, staying humble, and always being open to learning and growth. And it's about remembering that true success is an inside job,
Yeah.
defined by our own values and sense of purpose, not by external measures of achievement.
Those are great takeaways. For me, it's the power of gratitude and choosing love over hate.
Mm.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity and striving to create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this deep dive into ego as the enemy. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Don't forget to subscribe to Motivation Library and hit that like button to support our channel.
We'll see you next time.